She stood in my yard with a handsaw in one hand and that fake HOA badge around her neck, yelling like she owned the whole street. My 8-year-old son, Liam, was still inside the treehouse he built with me last summer. "This ugly thing violates HOA height rules," she shouted, sawing through the last wooden beam as I ran toward her. Before I could reach, the structure cracked with a dry snap, and my boy fell straight through, hitting the ground with a scream that still burns in my head. I froze. Karen didn't. She actually looked proud. "Maybe now you'll learn to follow community standards," she said, brushing sawdust off her fancy blouse. My wife came running out, crying, holding Liam in her arms while I called 911. And you know what Karen did next? She dialed her own number first, to the HOA hotline, claiming we attacked her. When the deputies pulled up, she marched right to them and said, "Arrest him." He threatened me. I was still kneeling beside my son, blood on my hands from a scrape on his arm. One of the deputies looked torn, unsure who to believe. That's when Karen played her favorite card: "I'm the acting HOA chair, and this man's structure is illegal." But what she didn't know was that the land behind that fence wasn't HOA property at all. It was deeded separately, our private lot since the 1970s. My grandfather built that fence before this neighborhood even existed. And as I watched her lie through her teeth, something inside me snapped, not with rage, but with a calm, cold realization. Because this time, she'd gone too far. And she had no idea who she was dealing with. "You just sawed down your own freedom, Karen," I whispered as the deputies looked at the old deed in my trembling hands. Karen's smile faded the moment the deputy took the folded paper from my hand. It was the original property deed, yellowed, signed, and notarized decades ago. "This lot isn't under HOA jurisdiction," he muttered, flipping through the pages. Karen's face stiffened like wet cement. "That's fake," she blurted, voice cracking. "He forged that." I didn't answer. I just pulled out my phone and opened the file I'd been keeping for months, every fake notice, every threat, every video. And then I showed them the clip. Karen standing right there last week, bragging to another neighbor, "I'll have that treehouse gone before the month ends. Watch me." The deputy raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, is this you?" Karen stuttered, I was just enforcing HOA safety standards." He looked back at me. "Sir, is your kid okay?" Liam was sitting on the porch now, his leg bandaged, his eyes red from crying. My wife was holding him close. She whispered, "Why is she still here?" Before I could answer, Karen snatched her phone and barked, "You're all making a mistake. I have connections." She stepped away, calling someone, but the words that came next hit like a slap. "I'm calling Deputy Miller. He'll fix this mess." The officer standing next to me froze. "Deputy Miller? You mean my partner?" Karen's face went pale. I mean, the other Miller." The deputy turned cold. "Ma'am, step away from the family." And that's when I decided to end it, the quiet, bullied neighbor act. I stood up straight, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "Karen, you've been threatening my family for 6 months. You vandalized my fence. You trespassed. You hurt my son. You think your fake HOA badge protects you." She laughed nervously. "You can't do anything to me." I took a slow step closer. "Actually, I can. Because you're standing on private land, and I'm not just a homeowner." I reached into my back pocket and showed the small black ID card I hadn't used in years. Federal Property Law Division, U.S. Attorney's Office. Karen's mouth fell open. The deputy's eyes widened. "Sir, you're federal." I nodded slowly. "Retired. But I still know how this works." Karen stumbled back. You can't." "Oh, I can," I said quietly. "And I already recorded everything." Her phone slipped from her hand and hit the driveway. She didn't know it yet, but the footage she tried to delete weeks ago was about to go viral, and ruin her. Karen's hands started shaking as the deputy placed his hand on her shoulder. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stay right here." She tried to pull away, snapping, "You don't know who you're dealing with. My husband's on the HOA board, he'll sue you all." The deputy didn't even blink. "Your husband's got nothing to do with this. You just injured a child on private property." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The calm confidence she wore like armor was cracking, piece by piece. My wife was still comforting Liam, whispering softly while I walked over to the edge of the yard. The treehouse lay in splinters, wood, nails, and memories all mixed with dirt. I picked up one of the broken boards, the one Liam painted blue with his name on it, and my chest tightened. Then I noticed something. Right under the wreckage, half buried, was a small black box, the camera we'd hidden last summer for wildlife footage. The lens was still pointed straight at where Karen had stood. I brushed off the dust and opened the file. It had recorded everything, her cutting through the supports, Liam yelling for her to stop, her laughing as the treehouse fell. I didn't say a word. I just handed the camera to the deputy. He watched for maybe 10 seconds before calling for backup. "We're upgrading this to felony assault," he said, voice firm now. "And possible vandalism of private property." Karen's face drained of all color. You can't arrest me for that. It was an accident." I looked at her calmly. "You called it a victory 5 minutes ago." She stepped back, stuttering, "This is a setup. He's using fake evidence." The deputy's radio crackled. Another voice came through. "Unit 4, bring her in. We've got her HOA complaint record here. Multiple harassment reports from neighbors." That was the moment she realized she wasn't walking away from this one. Her eyes darted toward her car, like she was planning to run, but 2 more patrol cars pulled up, blocking her driveway. My wife finally spoke, voice steady and low. "You could have just talked to us, Karen. But you went after a kid." Karen looked down at her shaking hands, then at the saw still lying on the ground. She tried to mutter something, but the words never formed. The deputies led her to the cruiser, and for the first time since we moved here, the street was quiet. I turned to Liam, brushing his hair back. "You're okay, buddy," I whispered. "It's over now." But deep inside, I knew it wasn't really over. Because I'd just found something in the HOA emails, something that would prove this wasn't just Karen acting alone. That night, after everything settled, I sat in my office surrounded by the chaos Karen left behind. Broken wood, papers scattered, the smell of sawdust still hanging in the air. My laptop was open, the security drive plugged in. I was combing through months of HOA emails Karen had, accidentally, sent me once while trying to threaten me about a mailbox color violation. Buried deep in those threads was something odd, a message marked, confidential, enforcement support. It wasn't from Karen. It was from the HOA president, a man named Rick Dorman, who had written, "Handle the Johnson property. If they don't comply, do what's necessary." No paper trail. I leaned back slowly, staring at those words. Karen wasn't acting alone. She was carrying out orders. I transferred the file onto a flash drive and sent a copy to a friend in the sheriff's office. Then I forwarded everything to a contact from my old department, the same department that handled HOA fraud and property extortion cases. The next morning, 2 unmarked vehicles rolled into the neighborhood. I watched from my porch as the deputies headed straight to Rick's house. He stepped out all confident, shirt tucked, sunglasses on, holding his coffee mug like a CEO. But when they showed him the warrant, that smug smile melted faster than ice on blacktop. Karen was already in county lockup, but now the entire HOA board was under investigation. The whispers spread fast, neighbors walking their dogs, peeking from porches, phones buzzing nonstop. For once, the quiet, perfect street looked nervous. Around noon, one of the officers from the previous night stopped by. "You were right," he said, holding up a folder. "Those 2 were running an illegal fine scheme, forcing people to pay fake HOA penalties and pocketing the money." I nodded, not surprised. "I figured as much." He smirked a little. "You planning to go public with this?" I looked at Liam, sitting on the steps with his crutches, painting a new sign for what was left of the treehouse. "Not yet," I said quietly. "But when I do, I'll make sure they never hurt another family again." And just when I thought things might calm down, my phone buzzed. It was a private number. I answered, and a slow, raspy voice said, "You don't know what you've started, Mr. Johnson. Some people in this neighborhood have bigger plans than you realize." The call cut off. I just sat there, staring at the phone, realizing Karen wasn't the biggest threat here. She was just the front. That night, the wind howled through the trees where the old treehouse once stood, and I couldn't shake that voice from my head. "Bigger plans than you realize." It echoed like a warning. I went back through the HOA files one last time, tracing the email trail further, and there it was. A folder labeled, "Expansion Proposal, Private Development." Hidden attachments showed blueprints, land surveys, and signatures, including Karen's. They were planning to sell off the back half of our neighborhood, the part that included our backyard, to a private builder. That's why Karen wanted the treehouse gone. It wasn't about rules or appearances, it was about money. The next morning, I went to the sheriff's office with everything, the emails, footage, and call recording from the night before. The sheriff, a steady man with years of experience, leaned back in his chair and said, "You've got yourself a full-blown law corruption case here." He made a call right in front of me. Within hours, county investigators moved in. By evening, news vans were outside the WA office. Reporters called it the Treehouse scandal. Cameras caught the moment Karen was led out in cuffs, trying to hide her face, while Rick Dorman shouted, "This is a misunderstanding." Neighbors gathered near our yard, whispering in disbelief. Some came up and hugged my wife, apologizing for not believing us sooner. Liam, standing beside me on his crutches, looked up and said, "Dad, does this mean they can't take our land?" I smiled, kneeling beside him. "They can't take what's ours, son. Not when the truth's on our side." A week later, the county declared all WA operations suspended pending investigation. The fake fines were refunded, the threats stopped, and peace, real peace, settled on our street for the first time in years. On Sunday morning, we rebuilt the treehouse, stronger this time, with the same neighbors who once avoided us now offering help. As the last plank went in, Liam hung a small wooden sign he painted himself. It said, "This land is ours." I looked around at the people smiling, working, laughing, no WA badges, no threats, no fear. Just neighbors again. And as the sun went down, I looked at the rebuilt treehouse and said quietly to myself, I didn't fight for justice in a courtroom just to lose it in my own backyard. Because in this country, your home isn't just property. It's freedom, and nobody saws that down. She cut down a treehouse, but ended up cutting down her own power. Shedding tree.